Hello, this is Alekius, and welcome to Sailwind. We're going to be going over some basics of sailing, and a lot of that time is going to be spent essentially with a blackboard. But we'll be ducking into where I left off with the ASMR series, in and out, to demonstrate some of the principles, but most of it's going to be on what is essentially blackboard. So with that in mind, I want to pull that over now and go over some basics. And probably pause the game, otherwise I'm going to be way off course. So what we're looking at is a summary of certain concepts, and they won't all be explained perfectly correctly, probably because I'm not an expert sailor. I am knowledgeable. I have a physics background. And I'm going to be taking some shortcuts for simplicity's sake. This is supposed to be kind of an introductory to how to sail in Sailwind using some real-life concepts. So some simplifications are going to be made, and I'm not going to delve fully into certain aspects of sailing. With that, we'll be going over some basics, how wind interactions work, some of the geometry of catching the wind, how a sail is also an airfoil, and making use of the wind, and basic sail angles. So with that, I will go ahead and move back to here. So when we're talking about a sail, we have a sail, we have a boat, the mast, and a wind direction. I'm going to start with the wind right off 90 degrees on the beam of a ship. The wind hits a sail, and some of that is deflection, and some of that is the wind being an airfoil and creating lift. But let's not worry about that too much right now. The keel of the ship transfers some of the rotational moment energy of the wind pushing the mast, or the sail that pushes the mast, and it resists that rotation and transfers it into forward motion, as well as the sail itself being pushed forward by the wind directly, and some of the lifting force from being an airfoil. We'll get into that later. So let's go back. Actually, let's delete all that and look at the sail itself. If the wind is coming from this direction, we have wind, it hits here, it hits here, it hits here, it hits here, all along the sail, all the way to the trailing edge. As the wind, let's say if the wind is As the wind increases, the boat will increase. But how? Well, as the boat speeds up, the relative wind to the sail decreases. So as the boat speeds up, the wind becomes less until it reaches an equilibrium with the drag of the water and a number of other factors. And this isn't a physics lesson. Therefore, in a case like this, where the wind is coming directly from the side, theoretically, this will go just as fast as the wind is going and reach an equilibrium there. Because if the wind is going 5 knots, and the boat is going 5 knots, looking at this, we have an equilateral triangle. 5 here, and 5 here. So the wind just misses the sail until drag causes the boat to be less than 5 knots, and then the wind starts catching the sail again, and the apparent wind becomes strengthened and the boat accelerates. So you reach an equilibrium. One of the ways to trick this is to do a little bit of a different angle. So let's take a look at 3 situations. Clear this again. We have an equilateral, this being the keel, this being the wind, this being the sail. We have large angle sail. So the sail is angled more in line with the wind. And then we have shallow angle, or a tight sheet. And if the wind is going 5 and 5 and 5, you can see that the forward motion that is transferred to the boat increases or decreases. So this one would be equal, but this is a longer moment arm, and this is a shorter moment arm. And that's all based on if the wind is going 5 knots and the boat is going 2 knots forward, it will just miss the sail until drag from water and other forces slows it down enough, below 2 knots in this case, for the 5 knots of wind to start catching the sail again. The same for the 10 knot boat. If it's going 10 knots, 5 knots of wind will have just be missing the sail as it travels down. So the boat is moving forward as the wind is moving in, and the sail, it's just missing until it drops below 10, and then the wind starts to catch the sail. All the forces that are involved, which there are 3, but again, I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to start any internet arguments because it's not a very well understood how airfoils work. So the deflection is part of it, the airfoil is part of it, and you get all those combination of forces, and that drives the vessel forward. So let's get into a sail is also an airfoil. If we have a sail, it's at 45 degrees. We're keeping it here like this. The keel of the boat is here. We'll get the bow down there again. So we have our mast, we have our sail, and we have boat, mast, sail, wind. Wind's coming in at a 90-degree angle. Sure, there's the deflection aspects, but that's not the only way to move or get force from a sail. Because a sail is an airplane wing turned sideways, with one wing deep into the water and the other wing sticking out where the wind can catch it. And we're only concerned about that part. So if we draw the water here, that's kind of what a boat is. We don't have this part, so it would just serve to add much drag, although there are keel plates that can be added to a boat to help resist the turning moment of trying to tip the boat over. And you still have your tiller for steering the boat, much as the tail of an airplane, a traditional airplane, is. So if a sail is a wing turned sideways, how does it work? Well, we look at the cross section of it. It's pretty much like an airfoil this way. And what does a sail look like when it's catching the wind? It balloons like this. And much like the Orville brothers Wright brothers with the first airplane, they had an airfoil that was pretty much paper thin and had no bottom edge to it. And that's enough to create an airfoil and create lift, amongst the other forces, and I don't want to get into those. I'm just demonstrating this part of it. So we have a laminar airflow. If everything's working correctly, it's laminar. And Sailwind does not have those. Draw a few of the airflow segments. They come out here and rejoin the stream. So we have wind that is redirected. That's the blunt that we were talking about. But also we have high pressure here, highest pressure here, a low pressure zone here, causing our sail to have a motion thusly, kind of going off in a diagonal. The way you figure that is if you draw your sail, the center of effort, and you draw out from there. And that'll be your moment of lift to propel the boat forward by aerodynamic forces. The important part is the angle of this lift at various points on the sail. If the sail is billowing and forming a curve, then the center of effort, let's go with something like this, is at the center of the sail. Now there are differences. A square sail is pretty easy. If we look at it from behind, the center of effort is there. If we're looking at a triangle sail, they have a tendency to kind of billow out and have some curvature to them as they catch the wind, unless they're anchored to a batten or I forgot the sailing term. The wood arm, the yard arm for the sail. And then the center of effort is about the center of mass for the sail. And stiffening the edges of the sail can change that, but only slightly. Really, you just look for the center of the sail, and that's where your effort is. And then when you look at this from the side, sure, it's a triangle or a square, but it's pushing that way. And then you align with the keel along here, and the sail like this, center of effort, outwards this way. Whereas if we angle it this way, similar to this one, it's going to go that way. If we angle it this way, it's going to move that way, unless the wind is disrupted and forms vortices, because it's an angle of attack, just like an airplane if you're familiar with those at all. If the angle of attack of the wind is too high, make some room real quick. The angle of attack is too high, sure, you'll get the high pressure here and the higher pressure here, and you'll get low pressure over here still, but you'll also get a lot of disrupted airflow and vortices that cause a bunch of drag that cuts away and lowers all of that lift that you've generated with this pressure differential. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, tell me down below and I'll be happy to try and explain it in a different way that does make sense. So this brings us to making use of the wind. Going through the water creates a lot of drag. and the wind has to fight this constantly via the sail. There are other forms of drag and energy loss, as I've said before, and I won't delve into those. This is simplification for understanding. So how to set the sails to capture the right balance between speed and acceleration. Which, something I did not explain earlier, shallow, moderate, steep angle. Yes, we have 5 knots of wind. Yes, we're getting a maximum possible speed of 10 knots. 5 and 5, and 5 and 2. The problem with that is this lever arm to transfer this energy forward into forward motion, this arm is long in comparison to this one. This one is medium. This one is short. So if this number is your top speed, this number is your acceleration. And it really isn't that number. It's the difference between these two numbers via a ratio. I'm not going to get into it. I want to keep this simple. This is introductory. So this is our acceleration. So don't worry about it. Top speed, acceleration. The ratio of this is how well you're going to accelerate. So that ratio, and that ratio. So there's a most efficient angle of sail for every sail plan, for every keel, for every point of wind. And part of the way to find that is with tattletales, which we don't have in game. So I'm not going to teach that. Because we want laminar flow over the wing. And that'll get the most efficient use of the wind. And we have to balance top speed and acceleration, if that makes sense. So to do that, we have our wind. We have a boat going up, going at it. Well, geez. An artist I am not. That is a close haul. So this is into the wind. This is close hauled, close reach, beam reach, broad reach. Maybe I should make that an M then. Beam. And then running before the wind. Or a run. We want to find best points of sail for all of these. Into the wind, that's a no zone. Can't go here. If we wanted to do a close haul, if I draw us 2 masts, we're going to have 2 sails that are in line with the keel of the boat. And that's going to allow us to get maximum effort out of the wing. A lot of it, as we see, a lot of it is going to be spent trying to tip the boat over. So having a strong or pronounced keel or deep keel will help transfer that into forward motion. That's the airfoil, but we also have the deflection. Also helps to push the sail over. So everything's adding force to push the sailboat over, and that makes the keel very important in a close haul. But the sails are almost in line with the keel, straight forward and back. For close reach, we're looking at something more like a 30-degree angle. That's going to allow us to form a decent foil. Center of effort is still in this direction, but since we're traveling in this direction now, a larger component of that is forward. And similar for the deflection aspect. For beam reach, we're looking at a 45-degree angle. So let's go 0 degrees. Let's call this 25 to 30 or 20 to 30. I mean, there's more to it than that, but roughly, I want to give rules of thumb. So if you're more comfortable with 30, do 30. If you're more comfortable with eyeballing 20 degrees, that's fine. You don't need to get your protractor out in the middle of a game to figure this out. You're just kind of getting it somewhere close to there. So with the beam reach, we're trying to go this direction, and we form a foil, and a larger component of that is forward. So we get less heel. That's the boat starting to tip over, for those who don't know. This is our boat upright. When the wind pushes, it heels and tilts over so that the mast is pointing at an angle based on how much wind is pushing it over and how high your sails are, and don't worry about all that. For a broad reach, we start to transition. We let out the sheets a little bit more. If we follow our convention, this is like the 60-degree to 70-degree regime. And we're starting to lose a little bit of our foil. The angle of attack's getting pretty high at this point. So you, depending on if you're closer to a beam reach rather than a broad reach, like you're in the broad reach, but you're closer to there, 60-degree angle, might be more of an airfoil, and you'll be able to get some of that. But more and more, as we get into the broad reach, it's going to be blunt. It's going to be that deflection, just the wind pushing the sail forward and the vessel forward. And then as you get into the run, fore and aft ships will become what I have called goose-winged. I believe that is the correct term for it too, because you don't have any shadows. In Sailwind, I don't think that's a problem. So you get wind pushing the boat directly or close to directly. There's no chance. The angle of attack is way too high. You're never going to have an airfoil from behind. Just won't work. So those are the two primary. There's more to it than that. There's more components of lift and such. But again, I want to keep this simple so we can all sail in Sailwind. So how do we translate this into a sail angle that we want? Well, if we go back, I'm in a close haul here. Let's go to the third person view. And so everything is almost straight fore and aft because it's close hauled. And part of the reason for that is to catch that wind, and then the gaff, that sort of square sail on the back portion. Oh, I can get a mouse. That sail is slightly canted to the side because if I bring it in any more, I will have no ability to steer. So we do that, and we throw the tiller over to the right as far as we can. And as we speed up, there will be a point where the rudder cannot push any further to port, which might not actually be true. The wind may have eased up enough because it's providing a moment arm where the wind pushes on this, which twists about the sail. So let's look at this. We have our boat. The wind's coming from this direction. We are close hauled with a single mast, with a bowsprit, and a gaff. Because the wind is pushing on this sail, this gaff sail, it is providing a twisting motion. Sure, it's pushing on this one as well, providing a counter moment, but gaffs tend to be very weatherly, and they will overpower many other sails to push the nose of the boat into, or the bow of the boat, into the wind. And you have to be careful with that, because especially in Sailwind, with the cog, you can have a mizzen mast back here, and that provides a very strong moment arm to twist the whole back of the boat based on the wind. Whereas here, it's not quite that strong. Whoops. Fell off the boat. Hopefully that makes sense so far. And I do not have a chip log on this boat to demonstrate the rest, so I will go take care of that, and then we'll try a few other points of the wind in game. Alright, here we are. I have just exited the shipyard, having removed the cabin so we have clear visibility as we exercise some... Oh, that's awkward. You know what? Roll that up. Just stick that down there. We don't need it right now. Actually, can I stick it to the wall? No. Stick it back there. Out of the way. As we go about exercising some of what we've gone over on the points of the wind. So if I lower our jib, catch some wind, we want to head upwind. I want to see it start luffing. Oh, no, that's swinging. It'll start luffing soon enough. See how it starts waving? And that means it's not really doing any real work. So we have to bring it in. When you see that, you tighten the sail. Almost always. One unique circumstance I can think of. That's about as tight as you want. In line with the hull, it will still provide forward momentum. So if we go to the close hull, while in line, and we can go ahead and use the gaff during this as well. We'll keep her straight. Brought in as far as we can go. Alright, we see that there's not a lot of billowing. That means if we go a little bit further, I'm going to see some luffing. There, she's starting to let go. Flattening. And we've lost all way pretty much. As we come up, let things settle, pulling 2 knots. If we come to starboard slightly, so that the wind catches the jib, and we get more of a billow, be properly close hauled. It looks a little tight. We want that just off the main mast. And just that small adjustment, we're making 4 knots now. If we release it a little bit more, we're making 5 knots. If we keep sheeting out to, let's say, about there, we lose some of the sail's ability, but it's still catching some of the wind, and we'll transition to a close reach, being upwind. But not as closely as close hauled. And we're making almost 6. If I let out the gaff a little, we may make more. A lot of this is the airfoil aspect of a sail. And we can make almost 6 knots this way. We come right further, put the wind off of our beam, a little further, making about 6 knots. If you remember, we should have this sail about 45 degrees. We're looking at the center of effort of the sail and the angle that between this stay point and this stay point. So we want that to be about 45 degrees from the keel. So we've let out that sail. We are still on the beam reach. We are at 5 knots. Gaff should probably still be stiff, but we have picked up some speed, coming up to 6 knots using the gaff that way. At this point, we can also add in our square sail. So it has enough give. See, we wanted about 45 degrees. We are just above 6 knots. Bring her down. We can see just a little bit of wrinkling on the left side of the sail. Means it's sailing, not capturing the wind perfectly. A little bit further, just cupping the wind a little bit better, and we come up to 8 knots. Pull in that sheet just slightly, should capture a little bit more of the wind. Yeah, and we're making a nice steady 8 knots. Now we transition off of, actually she's headed upwind slightly, shifting as we change the sail configuration. Still doing 8 knots. Let's keep going to starboard. We'll go into the broad reach with the wind behind us at an angle. There's good. And we are still at 8 knots. can't get... Oh, we're coming a little too close to the wind. Let's bring it to the left slightly. There we go. At this point, we have to bring in the square sail as well. We'll wait on that. We want about a 60-degree angle now. So about there, we're maintaining 8 knots. And the gaff will start to deflect the wind. We bring in the square to 60 degrees as well. More or less. Yeah, and we're still maintaining 8 knots. And if we continue starboard, losing some speed. Alright, we have the wind almost directly aft of us, which is not terribly efficient. And we've dropped slightly below 8 knots. I'll let the square swing. That'll be fine for where it's at. And we will loosen the gaff as much as we can. We're almost back up to 8 knots. And then I'm going to do something with the jib, if I can manage it, the wind directly aft, and swing her to the other side. Oop. Grab the long winch. Swing it back the other way. We need the wind slightly offset. That side. Nope, too far, too far. Trying to swing the jib to the other side. So I'm going to put the wind slightly off our starboard quarter. Can I loosen it? Alright, she's going. Let her out all the way. She forms a 90 degree with the keel. Oh, we swung the gaff around. Whoops. Which swung the whole vessel around when we did that. Woo! She's lively. We're almost making 10 knots. Wind may have picked up. Bring in the gaff. What I'm trying to do right now is bring her goose-winged, which I don't think really matters for Sailwind. Oop, too far, too far. I don't want to swing the jib. In real life, this will allow you to capture more clean wind with all the sails by taking your fore and aft triangular sails and swinging them to opposite sides, alternating. You get a full configuration for running before the wind. Which we're making like 8 knots. If I switch back till the jib, or not the jib, the gaff swings again. Swing the tiller when we do that. Oh, went too too far. Still want some of the square. She's tight on this corner. I want to come back to the broad reach. That seems alright. Let out the square a little. About there. Bring in the jib slightly. Making 8 knots. If I read it, yeah, 8 knots. We bring in the gaff. We drop down to 6. Keep coming. That should have the rudder being a bit lively. But we swing back out the gaff. We pick up speed again. No, the wind's dying down. The tail. That's the hard part of doing this. Without a steady wind, can't really get the most accurate reading off the chip log. So if I do this again as an experiment, I may download one of the mods. Oh, the wind picked up. We just hit 8 knots again. And yeah, you can see the tail is picked up as well. So you can get some decent speed out of this. It's one I wanted to do for the demonstrations. I'm just going to swing back through things again. Trimming as I go, so we can see the sails as they transition between being effective and not. This seems to be about the beam reach. You can see that the square has a significant wrinkle in it, and the jib is not taut. Still billowing, still catching air, but not as effectively as it could be. I want to start with the jib, forward sail. Bring that in if I can. To about a 45-degree angle between the eye at the tip, right there, and the anchor point at the bowsprit. Need to bring in the square. Alright, we're about there. And the gaff slightly. We're back up to 8 knots. Then we'll go into the wind. I'm deliberately not going to fix any of the sails. We'll see the square wrinkles heavily. And now it's lost all wind, and now it is backing. And the jib has lost hers. We can actually go in reverse like this. So the jib is not doing much of anything. Properly, squares can be used to back. But for properly backing the sail, where do we have the wind? Not directly into it. We have it off the starboard bow. So to back with the jib, because now we're catching the wind and making forward way, I need to let out this line so that I can pull in the other side until it crosses the mast, and that is backing. It is catching the wind, but providing a propulsion backwards. And the jib will need to be tightened. Or gaff. Except now we're pulling into the wind. And we give it a moment. Yeah, the gaff and the jib are fighting each other now. If I loosen the gaff again, she'll provide stability, because she stays in line with the wind. And the jib should be able to back us. You can see the chip log floater right there, slowly traveling forward now as we go backwards. So there you go. I hope that was informative. Hope you learned a thing or two. Please ask questions. There's probably something I didn't explain correctly, and someday in the future I may take the time to really hammer out each section and make a cleaner version of these basics for sailing in Sailwind. Thank you, and have a good day. Take care, everyone.